The lights inside the Geneva Orbital Research Station flickered for just a moment. Dr. Sarah Chen held her breath as she watched the numbers climb on her screen. Around her, 12 other scientists stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the same data streams that glowed in the darkness of the control room. "Power levels holding steady," called out James Martinez from his station. His voice cracked slightly. They had been working on this project for 7 years, and now everything came down to this single test. Sarah's fingers moved across her keyboard, adjusting variables that most physicists said should not even exist. The test chamber, floating 300 meters away from the main station, contained their creation. It was not much to look at from the outside, just a sphere of exotic metals and crystallized dark matter, but inside that sphere they were attempting to tear a hole through the very fabric of space itself. "Beginning ignition sequence," Sarah announced. Her hand hovered over the final command key. Around Earth and throughout the solar system, humanity had been alone for so long. They knew aliens existed out there. Radio telescopes had picked up their transmissions for decades. Humanity had even decoded some of their languages and learned about their great galactic council. But humanity could not join them. Their faster-than-light technology was too slow, too primitive. While alien ships traveled through special pathways in space called hyperlanes, human ships crawled through normal space at barely a fraction of light speed. Until now. Maybe. Sarah pressed the key. The sphere in the test chamber began to glow. Not with normal light, but with something that hurt to look at directly. The air itself seemed to bend around it. Then, without warning, space cracked. It looked like someone had taken a hammer to a sheet of glass, except the glass was reality itself. The cracks spread outward in impossible patterns, and through those cracks something else showed through. Something that was not quite darkness and not quite light. "We have ignition," someone shouted. The room erupted in cheers, but Sarah kept watching her instruments. The sphere was working exactly as they had theorized. It was not looking for natural hyperlanes like alien technology did. It was creating its own path, forcing space to move aside and let it through. "Recording velocity," Martinez said, his voice rising with excitement. 10 light years per hour, 20, 50, 100. He paused, checking his instruments twice. "Sarah, it's still accelerating. 200 light years per hour. 300. Sarah felt her heart hammering in her chest. Alien FTL drives, according to the transmissions they had intercepted, could manage about 10 light years per day at their fastest. They had just exceeded that speed by a factor of 50, and their test drone was still accelerating. 500 light years per hour and holding, Martinez finally announced. "The drone is stable. All systems nominal." The room fell silent. They had done it. They had actually done it. Humanity had just leapfrogged over thousands of years of alien technological development in a single afternoon. Then the alarm started blaring. "What is that?" Sarah demanded, pulling up new data screens. Something was wrong. The tier in space they had created was not closing properly. It was radiating energy outward in massive waves, spreading through space at incredible speeds. "Gravitational ripples," explained Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the physics station. "Sarah, we just rang the dinner bell. Every species with decent sensors within 100 light years is going to know something happened here." Sarah swore under her breath. They had been so focused on making the drive work that they had not fully considered how visible it might be. The test had lasted only 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes had apparently lit up sensors across dozens of star systems. "Shut it down," she ordered. "Controlled deactivation sequence. Let's not make this worse." The team worked quickly, carefully powering down their creation. The tiers in space slowly sealed themselves and the impossible light faded away. The test drone returned safely through the closing portal, its hull slightly warped but intact. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but Sarah could not shake the feeling that they had just made a terrible mistake. 3 days later, her fears were confirmed. The United Earth Government's Defense Command called an emergency meeting. Sarah and her team were ordered to attend via secure video link. When the screen flickered to life, she saw Admiral Thompson's grim face staring back at her. "Dr. Chen," he said without preamble, "we have a situation. 20 minutes ago, our deep space sensors detected multiple objects entering the solar system. They came from the direction of Alpha Centauri. They are moving fast and they are headed directly for Earth." Sarah's mouth went dry. "How fast?" "Faster than anything we have ever seen. They will reach Earth orbit in approximately 16 hours. The Admiral paused. Doctor, I need to know. Could your test have attracted attention? Yes, Sarah admitted quietly. We created gravitational waves that would have been visible for dozens of light years. If anyone was watching, they would have seen it. The Admiral nodded slowly. Then you should know that we received a transmission from these ships 10 minutes ago. It was broadcast in 23 different languages, including English. He pressed a button and a new voice filled the room. It was not human. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with grinding stone, but the words were clear and precise. Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. You have violated the Kardashev Accords through unauthorized and dangerous FTL experimentation. Cease all such activities immediately. A diplomatic envoy will arrive within 1 solar day to discuss terms of your compliance. Resistance will not be tolerated. The transmission ended. Sarah looked at her team, seeing her own fear reflected in their faces. Humanity had reached for the stars and finally touched them. But the stars, it seemed, were reaching back, and they did not sound happy about it. The next 16 hours would determine humanity's future among the galactic community. Sarah just hoped they would survive long enough to have a future at all. The alien ships arrived exactly when they said they would. Sarah watched from the observation deck of the Geneva station as 5 vessels dropped out of FTL at the edge of Earth's orbit. They were beautiful in a strange way, all flowing curves and crystalline structures that caught the sunlight and split it into colors that should not exist. The largest ship moved forward slowly, carefully. Its hull shimmered with symbols that shifted and changed as Sarah watched. A smaller craft detached from it and began descending toward Earth's surface. The United Earth government had arranged a meeting at the Geneva Ground Complex, neutral territory, where the first contact would take place. Sarah and her team were there when the alien shuttle landed. It touched down without a sound, and a door that Sarah had not even seen opened in its side. The being that emerged was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with skin that looked like polished bluestone. It had 4 arms, 2 legs, and a face that was almost human except for the 3 golden eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. I am Ambassador Zixthera of the Velcrin hegemony, the alien said in perfect English. Its mouth did not move. Instead, a device on its chest translated its thoughts into sound. I speak for the Galactic Council in matters concerning technological violations and system security. President Maria Santos of the United Earth government stepped forward. She looked tiny compared to the ambassador, but her voice was steady. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. I am President Santos. We received your message, though I must admit we do not understand what laws we have broken. We were not aware that experimentation within our own solar system was restricted. Zixthera's 3 eyes focused on the president, then shifted to Sarah and her team. You are not aware because your species has not yet been invited to join the galactic community. Your technology was deemed insufficient for contact. That assessment, it seems, requires revision. Insufficient? Martinez muttered beside Sarah. She elbowed him to be quiet. The ambassador gestured and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of glowing lines connecting star systems. These are the approved hyperlanes, natural corridors in space where faster-than-light travel is safe and regulated. All species in the Council use these pathways. Travel speed is limited to 10 light-years per standard day to prevent temporal disruptions and dimensional instabilities. Sarah leaned forward, studying the map. We did not use hyperlanes. We created our own path. Precisely the problem, Zixthera said. Its tone suggested it was not pleased. 5,000 years ago, the Galactic Council established the Kardashev Accords. These treaties limit FTL technology to prevent catastrophic events. Uncontrolled FTL drives can tear holes in space-time. They can create temporal paradoxes. They can attract attention from things that should remain unnoticed. What things? President Santos asked. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. That information is restricted to Council members. What you need to know is that your experiment violated laws established for the safety of all species. You must surrender your research immediately and agree to use only Council-approved FTL technology. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. They had worked for 7 years. They had succeeded where everyone said they would fail. And now aliens were telling them to throw it all away because of laws humanity never agreed to follow. President Santos must have felt the same way. Ambassador, with all respect, humanity is not part of your council. We did not sign your accords. We cannot be held responsible for laws we did not know existed. Ignorance is not an excuse for endangering the galaxy, Zixthera replied coldly. You will comply or the Council will take more direct action. Is that a threat? Admiral Thompson stepped forward, his hand resting on his sidearm. Useless against an alien in armor, Sarah thought, but the gesture was clear enough. It is a statement of fact, the ambassador said. Your species is young and reckless. You do not understand the forces you are manipulating. Before you respond, perhaps you should see what your test actually accomplished. Another hologram appeared. This one showed their test 3 days ago, but from a different perspective. Sarah watched as their drive activated and space cracked open, but in this view she could see something she had missed. The cracks spread far beyond the test chamber. They rippled outward through space like waves on a pond, passing through planets and stars as if they were not there. The waves reached dozens of systems, causing sensor equipment to fail and ships to lose navigation. You disrupted communications across 43 systems, Zixthara explained. You caused 3 ships to emerge from FTL in the wrong locations. One of those ships crashed. 12 crew members died because of your carelessness. Sarah felt sick. They had killed people. Alien people, but still. They had not meant to, had not even known it was possible. But the result was the same. However, the ambassador continued, what truly concerns the Council is this. The hologram changed again, showing readings Sarah did not fully understand. Your drive achieved 500 light-years per day in testing. This is 50 times faster than any technology in the known galaxy. If your species develops this into working ships, the balance of power in the galaxy will shift dramatically. And there it was, Sarah realized. The real reason they were here, it was not just about safety or laws. It was about power. Some species in the Council were afraid of what humanity might become. President Santos smiled thinly. So you are not just concerned for our safety. You are concerned we might become too powerful too quickly. Both concerns are valid, Zixthera admitted. The Council has maintained peace for 5,000 years through careful regulation of technology and resources. Your species could destabilize everything. Or we could help advance everyone, Sarah found herself saying. Everyone turned to look at her. She swallowed nervously but continued. Our FTL drive does not rely on natural hyperlanes. We could open up parts of the galaxy that have been unreachable. We could connect isolated systems. Share it, I mean. We could share the technology with the Council. Absolutely not, said a harsh voice. Another alien had entered the room, this one reptilian with scales that gleamed like oil. The Council has spent millennia ensuring dangerous technologies remain controlled. We will not allow an upstart species to upset that order. Zixthera looked annoyed at the interruption but did not disagree. Councillor Vrask speaks harshly, but his point is valid. Your species lacks the wisdom to wield such power responsibly. President Santos's expression hardened. Ambassador, Councillor, I thank you for your concerns. But humanity did not ask for permission to advance, and we will not ask for it now. We will continue our research. If the Council wishes to discuss partnership or sharing of technology, we are open to that conversation. But we will not surrender our work, and we will not be threatened into compliance. The room went dead silent. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. The President was refusing. She was actually refusing the Galactic Council's demands. Zixthera's 3 eyes widened slightly. President Santos, you do not understand the consequences of this decision. Perhaps not, Santos agreed. But we will find out together. This meeting is over. The aliens left without another word. As their shuttle lifted off and returned to their ship, Martinez turned to Sarah. What have we just done? I have no idea, Sarah admitted. But I think we just told the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around. 2 days later, the United Earth government announced the launch of the UESS Prometheus, humanity's first FTL-capable warship. It would make a test run to Alpha Centauri and back to demonstrate that humanity's technology was real and functional. When the Prometheus completed the journey in 47 minutes instead of the normal 3 weeks, the galaxy finally understood that everything had changed. Humanity was not asking to join the galactic community anymore. They were announcing their arrival whether the Council liked it or not. The celebrations after the Prometheus's successful test flight lasted exactly 4 hours. Then the deep space sensors picked up something that turned cheering into screaming. Sarah was still in the control room when the alerts started blaring. She had barely slept in 3 days, running on coffee and adrenaline, but the sound of those alarms jolted her fully awake. The main display showed a massive energy signature appearing near Saturn's orbit. It had not traveled there. It had not emerged from FTL. It had simply appeared as if reality had opened up and let something through. "What am I looking at?" Admiral Thompson demanded over the communication link. He had stayed at Earth Defense Command after the diplomatic disaster with the Council. "I do not know," Sarah admitted, pulling up more detailed scans. "The signature does not match anything in our database. It is not a ship. It is not a natural phenomenon. It is just there, and it is big. Really big." "How big?" Sarah checked the numbers twice, then a third time, hoping she had made a mistake. She had not. "Roughly the size of Earth's moon. And it is moving, heading in-system toward us." The communication channel suddenly filled with interference, then cleared as a new voice cut through. It was Zixthera. "Human vessels, you must evacuate the inner system immediately. A devourer has breached into normal space. Your FTL experiments have attracted it." "What is a devourer?" President Santos asked. She had joined the channel from the ground complex. "Death," Zixthera said simply. 10,000 years ago, an ancient race called the Architects built FTL drives similar to yours. They thought themselves masters of space and time. Then the Devourers came. Within a single year, the Architects' entire civilization was destroyed. Thousands of worlds rendered lifeless. We found only ruins and warnings carved in dead stone. The Council was formed in the aftermath, specifically to prevent this from happening again. Sarah felt ice spreading through her veins. "You knew this could happen. You knew there was something out there that our drives could attract, and you did not tell us? Would you have believed us?" The ambassador shot back. "You were told to stop. You refused. Now you will see why the Council's laws exist." The thing near Saturn was becoming visible now on optical sensors. Sarah wished it had stayed invisible. It was wrong. That was the only word she could think of to describe it. The entity looked like someone had taken a piece of space itself, crumpled it up, and then partially unfolded it again. It had too many angles that should not exist. Looking at it made her eyes hurt and her head spin. Shapes that were somehow both convex and concave at the same time. Colors that were not quite colors. Movement that suggested it existed in more dimensions than the three she could see. "Is anyone else seeing that?" Martinez asked weakly. He had gone pale and was looking away from the screen. "Do not look directly at it," Zixthera warned. "The Devourers exist partially outside normal spacetime. Observing them too closely can damage organic minds. We lost hundreds of researchers that way in the early days after their discovery. Even as they watched, the Devourer reached one of Saturn's moons. What happened next would give Sarah nightmares for years. The moon did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to exist, unraveling into streams of matter and energy that flowed into the Devourer like water down a drain. In less than 10 seconds, a celestial body that had existed for billions of years was gone. "We have to stop it," Admiral Thompson said, "before it reaches the inner planets, before it reaches Earth." "You cannot stop it," Counselor Vrask's voice joined the channel. "Your weapons are useless. Conventional explosives, lasers, kinetic weapons, they all simply pass through it or are absorbed. The only reason we survived the last Devourer incursion was that it eventually left on its own after consuming what it wanted. We ran and hid until it was gone. So your plan is to run away?" President Santos's voice was hard. "To abandon Earth and everyone on it?" "Your planet is already doomed," Vrask said flatly. "The Devourer is drawn to FTL signatures. You activated the strongest FTL drive in galactic history. It will not leave until it has consumed the source." Sarah was only half listening now. Her mind was racing through everything they knew about their FTL drive, everything they understood about space-time manipulation, everything they had learned from the Architect's warnings that Zixthera had finally shared. An idea was forming, insane and desperate, but possibly their only chance. "What if we did not run?" she said suddenly. Everyone stopped talking. "What if we used the drive that attracted it to fight back?" "That is suicide," Zixthera said. "The Devourer will destroy any ship that gets close to it." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "But our drive does not just move through space. It tears it open. It creates controlled breaches in reality. What if we created a breach inside the Devourer itself, used our own technology to close the door we accidentally opened?" There was a long silence. Then Zixthera said quietly, "That is the most insane plan I have ever heard. It might actually work, but someone would need to pilot a ship into the entity's core and activate the drive manually. The energy fluctuations would prevent remote control. "I will do it," said a new voice. "Commander Marcus Rivera, captain of the Prometheus. My ship has the strongest FTL drive ever built. If anyone can make this work, it is us." "Marcus, you will die," Sarah said, her throat tight. "Maybe," he replied, echoing her earlier words. "But if I do nothing, everyone dies. That is not really a choice at all." The next 6 hours were a blur of desperate preparation. The Council fleet, putting aside their differences with humanity for the moment, moved to support the attack. They could not hurt the Devourer, but they could provide cover and distraction. Smaller ships, faster ships, drawing its attention while the Prometheus moved into position. Sarah worked frantically to modify the Prometheus's FTL drive, turning it from a transportation device into a weapon. The theory was simple, but the execution was anything but. They needed to create a massive space-time breach inside the Devourer, a collapse so violent it would force the entity back through the dimensional tear it had used to enter their reality. As the fleet moved to intercept near Jupiter, Sarah found herself on the bridge of the Council flagship Eternal Truth beside Zix Thera. The ambassador had been surprisingly helpful once they started working together, sharing technical data that the Council had kept secret for millennia. "Why are you helping us now?" Sarah asked as they watched the battle unfold on the view screens. Council ships darted around the Devourer like insects around a fire, launching everything they had. Nothing worked. Weapons vanished into its impossible geometry. Ships that got too close simply stopped existing. "Because you were right," Zix Thera admitted. "The Council has spent so long trying to control everything, to prevent change, that we forgot how to adapt. Your species is reckless and young, but you face the impossible and ask how to beat it, instead of how to run from it. Perhaps we needed that reminder." On the screen, the Prometheus broke through the Council's defensive line and accelerated directly toward the Devourer. Sarah held her breath. This was it. Either Marcus would succeed, or humanity's first venture into galactic affairs would end in disaster. The Prometheus reached the Devourer's outer edge and did not disintegrate. It pushed forward, its hull straining, metal screaming as it forced its way into spaces that should not exist. Then suddenly the Devourer stopped thrashing. Its chaotic movements became more organized, more purposeful. The impossible angles aligned into something almost like a face, and Sarah swore she saw it looking directly at the Prometheus. "What is happening?" Zix Thera demanded. "This is not normal behavior." "I do not know," Sarah whispered. But deep in her gut she felt something shift. This was not going according to plan. The Devourer was not reacting with mindless hunger anymore. It was reacting with something that looked disturbingly like recognition. Inside that thing, Marcus Rivera was about to discover something that would change everything they thought they knew about the Devourers and the ancient architects who had unleashed them on the galaxy. Marcus Rivera had seen a lot of strange things since becoming captain of humanity's first FTL warship. But nothing had prepared him for the inside of a Devourer. The moment the Prometheus crossed the entity's boundary, everything changed. The normal laws of physics seemed more like suggestions here. His instruments showed he was moving forward, backward, and sideways all at the same time. The ship's hull groaned as it tried to exist in spaces that had too many dimensions. "Status report," Marcus said, forcing his voice to stay calm, even though his mind was screaming at him to look away from the view screen. Outside the ship, if outside even meant anything here, he could see fragments of reality floating past, pieces of stars, chunks of planets, whole ships frozen in time, all drifting through an ocean of impossible colors. "Hull integrity at 70% and falling," his second officer reported. Lieutenant Chen, no relation to Dr. Sarah Chen, was sweating despite the cold air on the bridge. "But sir, something is wrong. We are not being attacked. The Devourer is not trying to destroy us. It is almost like it is letting us through." Marcus had noticed that too. The entity could have crushed them instantly, just like it had done to Saturn's moons. Instead, it had opened a path, like it was inviting them deeper inside. "Keep moving forward," Marcus ordered. "We have a job to do. Get me to the core." As they pushed deeper, Marcus started seeing things, not with his eyes but in his mind. Images flashing past too quickly to fully understand. Cities of light and crystal, beings made of pure energy singing equations that held universes together. A civilization so advanced they had learned to shape reality itself like clay. The architects. These were memories of the architects, "Sir, you need to see this," Lieutenant Chen said urgently. She had been analyzing the energy patterns around them. "These readings, they match our FTL drive's quantum signature. This thing is not just attracted to our technology. It is responding to it, like it recognizes something familiar." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Can you boost our communication systems?" "I want to try something, sir." "Just do it. Route it through the FTL drive's emitters." Chen worked quickly, routing power to the communication array and linking it to their experimental drive. Marcus sat down at the control console and began entering commands. He was not trying to send words. Instead, he was sending mathematical equations. The same equations that made their FTL drive work. Quantum formulas that described how to fold space and create bridges between dimensions. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Devourer responded. It was not language, not exactly. It was pure information flowing directly into Marcus's mind. Images and emotions and understanding all arriving at once. And in that moment, Marcus learned the terrible truth about the Devourers. They had once been the architects themselves. 10,000 years ago, the architects had built the most powerful FTL drive in history. Not to travel between stars, but to travel between universes. They wanted to explore the infinite realities that existed beyond their own. They succeeded, but they did not understand the cost. When their drive activated, it did not just open a door to another universe. It merged the two universes together. The architects found themselves existing in both realities at once. Their matter and energy spread across dimensions they could not fully perceive. It was agony beyond description. They tried to reverse the process, but only made it worse. More universes merged. More of their people were transformed into these impossible beings caught between dimensions, unable to fully exist in any one reality. The pain drove them mad. They became the Devourers, desperately consuming matter and energy from normal space, trying to make themselves whole again. But nothing worked. They were broken at a fundamental level, and they had broken themselves. The few architects who had not been transformed tried to warn other species. They built monuments and left messages carved in indestructible materials. Do not follow our path. Do not reach too far. Do not tear holes in reality itself. Then they died out, leaving behind only their transformed brethren and their warnings. The Galactic Council had found these warnings and built their entire civilization around avoiding the architect's fate. They limited FTL technology, restricted research, maintained control, not because they were power-hungry, though some were, but because they were terrified of creating more Devourers. And now humanity, in their ignorance and ambition, had created a drive using the same principles the architects had used. They had rung the same bell, and the Devourers had come, drawn by the familiar signature of the technology that had destroyed them. Marcus opened his eyes, tears streaming down his face. The knowledge the Devourer had shared was overwhelming, but within that knowledge he had also found something else. A solution. A way to fix what the architects had broken so long ago. "Chen," he said hoarsely, "I need you to recalibrate the FTL drive. Not for a weapon. For healing. The calculations are in my datapad. I am uploading them now. Sir, I do not understand."
"What are we healing?"
"Them," Marcus said simply, gesturing at the impossible space around them. "We are going to heal them." Back on the Eternal Truth, Sarah watched in confusion as the Prometheus stopped moving. The ship had reached what sensors approximated as the center of the Devourer, but instead of activating their weapon, it was just sitting there. "What is Rivera doing?" Admiral Thompson demanded. Before anyone could answer, Sarah's console lit up with an incoming data stream. It was from Marcus, transmitted at incredible bandwidth. She began reading and her face went pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, he figured it out." "Figured what out?" Zixthera moved to read over her shoulder. The ambassador went very still. "This cannot be. The Devourers are the architects? The council never knew. Or they never told anyone," Councillor Vrask said bitterly. He had joined them on the bridge. "I see now why the elder species were so adamant about maintaining control. They knew the truth and hid it to maintain their power." Sarah was barely listening. She was reading Marcus's plan, understanding what he intended to do and feeling her heart break. The human FTL drive worked differently than the architects had. Where the architects had merged universes, humanity's drive created temporary bridges that sealed behind them. That difference was crucial. If they could modify the drive correctly, They could use it to separate the merged dimensions, to untangle the devourers from the spaces they had been trapped in for 10,000 years. But it required someone to be inside the devourer during the process. Someone to manually adjust the drive in real time as the dimensions separated. The energy fluctuations would be catastrophic. No ship could survive it remotely, and no person could survive it at all. Marcus was going to die to save a creature that had come to destroy them. "Can we stop him?" Admiral Thompson asked. "No," Sarah said quietly. "And we should not. This is the right thing to do." On the view screen, the Prometheus began to glow, not with normal light, but with the same impossible colors they had seen when the Devourer first appeared. Marcus had activated the modified FTL drive. Space around the Devourer began to shift and change, no longer blending multiple dimensions but carefully separating them. The Devourer screamed. Sarah heard it somehow, even though sound should not travel through space. It was a sound of pain and relief all at once. The entity began to change, its impossible geometry slowly resolving into something more comprehensible. The fragments of reality trapped inside it began breaking free, returning to normal space. Planets and stars and even time itself started flowing back into the universe where they belonged. And at the center of it all, Marcus Rivera sat at his controls and worked. He could feel his body breaking down, could feel himself being pulled in too many directions at once. But he kept his hands steady and made the calculations work. He thought about Earth, about his family, about the future humanity would have because of what he was doing right now. "Sarah," he transmitted, his voice weak, "tell everyone this was worth it. Tell them the Devourers were not monsters, just people who made a mistake. Tell them we fixed it." Then the light became too bright to see, and Marcus Rivera gave his life to heal a wound that had bled for 10,000 years. The light faded slowly like a sunset that lasted for hours. When Sarah could finally see again, the Devourer was gone. In its place was something that looked like a living aurora, sheets of colored light flowing in patterns that suggested intelligence and purpose. It was still not entirely of this universe, but it was no longer trapped between dimensions. It was free, and floating in the center of it, somehow intact, was the Prometheus. "Get me a scan of that ship," Sarah shouted, hardly daring to hope. The readings came back showing massive damage. Hull breaches on every deck, systems failing across the board. But there were life signs, faint but present. Marcus had survived. The entity that had been a devourer seemed to notice the ship at the same moment Sarah did. Gently, more gently than should have been possible for something so vast. It wrapped tendrils of light around the Prometheus and pushed it back toward the fleet. The ship drifted free of the Aurora, and Sarah could see scorch marks and warping across its hull that would take months to repair. Recovery teams from both human and alien ships rushed forward. Marcus was found unconscious on the bridge, every bone in his body broken, his DNA partially rewritten by the energies he had been exposed to. But he was alive. Against all odds and every prediction, Marcus Rivera had survived. The Aurora entity remained for 3 more days. During that time, it sent streams of information to every ship in the system. Not in words, but in pure concepts that translated automatically in each species' mind. It showed them what had really happened to the architects. It showed them the pain of existing in multiple dimensions at once. And it showed them gratitude for being healed, for being freed from 10,000 years of torment. Then it opened a final message, this one directed specifically at Sarah and her team. "Thank you. We remember, we watch. We hope you succeed where we failed. Do not fear your technology, but respect it. Do not restrict knowledge, but use it wisely. The universe is vast and full of wonders. You have earned the right to explore it." The Aurora collapsed inward on itself and vanished, returning to whatever space existed between dimensions. But unlike before when devourers appeared by tearing holes in reality, this departure was clean, controlled. It left no wounds in spacetime, no gravitational ripples, no damage. Just a peaceful absence where something impossible had briefly existed. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy exploded with activity. The younger species of the Galactic Council, those who had been denied advanced technology and held back by the elder race's restrictions, saw what humanity had accomplished and demanded change. They wanted the technological treaties rewritten. They wanted the monopoly on power broken. They wanted a voice in how the galaxy was run. The elder species resisted at first. Councillor Vrask argued that the current system had maintained peace for 5,000 years. But Zixthera, to everyone's surprise, sided with the reformers. "We maintained peace by suppressing advancement," the ambassador said during the emergency council session that Sarah watched via secure transmission. "We told ourselves it was for safety, but Commander Rivera proved that technology is not inherently dangerous. It is how we use it that matters. Humanity could have destroyed the Devourer, but they chose to heal it instead. That is the wisdom we should be promoting, not the fear that has guided us for millennia." The debates raged for months. Some species threatened to leave the council entirely. Others proposed splitting into multiple factions. But slowly, painfully, a consensus emerged. The galaxy needed to change. The question was how. Sarah found herself at the center of these discussions, much to her discomfort. She was a scientist, not a politician, but the galaxy wanted to hear from humanity. And since Marcus was still recovering from his injuries, she had to speak for Earth. 6 months after the Devourer incident, Sarah stood before the full Galactic Council. It was her first time seeing the council chambers in person. A massive structure orbiting a neutron star at the galaxy's center. Representatives from 47 species filled the seats. Their attention focused entirely on her. "Members of the council," Sarah began, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the vast chamber. "Humanity did not seek to disrupt your order. We simply wanted to reach the stars. But in doing so, we learned that order maintained through restriction is not true order at all. It is stagnation. We do not propose chaos," she continued. "We propose collaboration. Humanity will share our FTL technology freely with any species that wants it. In return, we ask that you share your knowledge with us, not just about technology, but about the galaxy itself, about the dangers that exist, the wonders we might find, the mistakes we should avoid." She pulled up a hologram showing her proposal, months of work condensed into a single document. "We call it the Geneva Protocols, a new framework for technological development that balances innovation with safety. It includes early warning systems to detect dimensional breaches before they become dangerous, rapid response teams trained to handle FTL accidents, and most importantly, shared research conducted by scientists from all species working together. Humanity offers to lead this initiative," Sarah said. "But we do not want to control it. We want every species to have a voice. We want the Council to represent all of us, not just the oldest or most powerful." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives loved the idea. Others hated it. Many were simply confused about how such a thing would even work. The debates continued for hours, then days, then weeks. In the end, the vote was close. 25 species in favor, 20 against, 2 abstaining. The Geneva Protocols passed by the narrowest possible margin. The Galactic Council would remain, but it would be reformed. Technology would be shared, not hoarded. Research would be collaborative, not restricted. And humanity would have a seat at the table, not as junior members waiting to prove themselves, but as full equals who had earned their place through courage and compassion. Sarah was offered the position of Director of Galactic Research and Development. She almost refused, wanting nothing more than to return to her lab and her experiments. But then she thought about Marcus, still recovering in a hospital on Earth, his body slowly adapting to the changes the Devourer's energies had made to him. He had sacrificed everything to do the right thing. The least she could do was accept some responsibility. 5 years later, Sarah stood in the observation deck of Humanity's Hope, the first joint research station built by multiple species working together. Ships from across the galaxy came and went, carrying scientists eager to explore the new possibilities humanity's FTL drive had opened up. No longer restricted to the old hyperlanes, they could reach previously isolated systems, make contact with species that had been cut off for thousands of years, and explore regions of the galaxy that had been considered too dangerous or too remote. Marcus was with her, fully recovered now and serving as ambassador to the Reformed Council. The energies he had absorbed had changed him in strange ways. He could sense disturbances in space-time before instruments detected them. He sometimes saw things that existed slightly outside normal reality. It was disconcerting but useful. He had already helped prevent 3 potential dimensional breaches by detecting the early warning signs. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Marcus asked, watching a Velcrin research ship dock with the station. "Opening everything up like this. There are species out there that might misuse the technology." "Probably," Sarah admitted, but hiding it away and hoping no one else discovers it did not work either. The architects proved that. Better to face the future together than separately. A soft alert chimed on Sarah's datapad. She checked it and smiled. We just received a transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. They detected a faint signal from the same direction the healed devourer went. It is sending us mathematical equations. What kind of equations? New ones. Formulas we have never seen before. Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. I think it is teaching us. Showing us safer ways to manipulate space-time. Marcus, I think the architects are still trying to help us even now. Marcus looked out at the stars, at the ships carrying people from dozens of species all working toward a common goal. Then we better not let them down. They made mistakes, but they are giving us the chance to do better. We should take it. Humanity's journey to the stars had begun with an experiment that nearly destroyed everything. It had continued with first contact that almost became first war. It had been tested by an ancient enemy that turned out to be a wounded victim. And it had succeeded because humanity chose understanding over fear, collaboration over control, and healing over destruction. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of opportunities. And now, thanks to humanity's reckless courage and unexpected compassion, every species in the Galactic Council had the chance to explore it together. On Earth, in the Geneva ground complex where humanity first met the Galactic Council, a new monument was unveiled. It showed the Prometheus flying into the heart of the Devourer, commemorating the day humanity proved they belonged among the stars, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because when faced with the impossible choice between destroying an enemy and healing a victim, they chose compassion. The plaque beneath read simply, "They reached for the stars and the stars reached back." May we always remember that the greatest power is not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to heal. And somewhere in the space between dimensions, the healed architects watched and remembered and hoped that this time, this species, this brave and foolish humanity, would finally get it right. Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, looking out at the vast emptiness of space. Earth had changed a lot since the 2060s. Nations had put aside their differences and united against bigger threats: climate change, resource scarcity, and the unknown dangers of space. The United Earth Defense Force was their shield against whatever might be out there in the darkness. "Captain, we're picking up something strange near Pluto's orbit," said Lieutenant Susan Adams. Her eyes fixed on the screen, John walked over to her station. "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure, sir. It's massive, but it wasn't there in our last scan." "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, displaying a blinking dot beyond Pluto. The object was moving toward the inner solar system at an impossible speed. "Get me a better image," John ordered. The screen zoomed in, and everyone on the bridge fell silent. A massive ship, unlike anything humans had built, was heading straight for Earth. Its dark metal surface was covered with strange patterns that seemed to glow with an inner light. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact." No. Response from Earth was immediate. The Valiant was to maintain position and attempt communication while a diplomatic team was assembled. 3 days later, Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez arrived on the Valiant. She was calm and focused despite the weight of her mission. "Captain Miller," she said, shaking his hand. "I understand we're about to make history." "Let's hope it's the good kind," John replied. The alien vessel had slowed its approach and now hung in space near Neptune. It had responded to Earth's signals with its own, and Earth's best linguists had been working around the clock to understand them. "They call themselves the Kreltharan Dominion," Lisa explained during the briefing. "From what we can tell, they're interested in peaceful contact." "Then why bring a ship that size?" asked John. The alien vessel was massive, easily 100 times larger than the Valiant. "We're new to them. Maybe they were being cautious," Lisa suggested. "In any case, they've invited us aboard." John didn't like it, but orders were orders. A small team consisting of John, Lisa, and 3 specialists would take a shuttle to the alien ship. As they approached, John couldn't help feeling small. The Kreltharan vessel dwarfed anything humans had ever built. It opened like a flower, revealing a docking bay where their shuttle could land. Inside, the air was breathable, and the gravity felt almost like Earth's. They were met by tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their leader introduced, himself as High Commander Xerix. "Welcome, humans," Xerix said, his words translated by a device one of his assistants held. "We have long watched your world from afar. It is time our peoples met." Lisa stepped forward. "We are honored by your invitation and look forward to peaceful relations between our species." The next few days were filled with meetings and exchanges of information. The Kreltharan seemed genuinely interested in Earth culture and technology, though they were clearly far more advanced. They spoke of trade and cultural exchange, and Lisa was optimistic about the possibilities. On the fourth day, while exploring a part of the ship with one of the junior Kreltharan officers, John noticed something odd. The officer had left a data pad unattended. John couldn't read the alien text, but he could copy it. He slipped the data into a scanner and returned to the human quarters. "Can you make anything of this?" he asked Dr. Helen Park, their xenolinguist. Helen worked through the night using the translation algorithms they'd developed. By morning, her face was pale. "Captain Ambassador, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking. "These aren't trade agreements they've been discussing with us. These are invasion plans." Lisa stared at the translated text in disbelief. "They've been studying Earth for decades, identifying our weaknesses. They don't want peace, they want our resources, they want Earth itself." "We need to get this information back to Earth immediately," John said. But before they could act, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. They were summoned to meet with High Commander Xerix. The Kreltharan leader's demeanor had changed. Gone was the friendly diplomat, replaced by a cold military commander. "We have detected your intrusion into our systems," Xerix said. "A pity. We had hoped to maintain the charade a little longer." "Why?" Lisa demanded. "Why pretend to want peace?" "It is simpler to take a world when its defenses are down," Xerix replied. "Your Earth has resources we need. Your oceans, your minerals, your people as labor. You will serve the Dominion." "Earth will never surrender," John said. "Then Earth will burn." Xerix turned to his officers. "Return them to their vessel. Send the message to our fleet. The invasion begins now." Under guard, John and the others were escorted back to their shuttle. As soon as they were away from the alien ship, John pushed the engines to maximum. "Earth Command," he transmitted. "This is Captain Miller of the Valiant. First contact has failed. The aliens are hostile. Repeat, the Kreltharan are hostile. They plan to invade Earth." But even as he sent the warning, hundreds of smaller ships were launching from the massive Kreltharan vessel. The Valiant shook as enemy fire struck its shields. "They're not trying to destroy us," Susan realized. "They're herding us toward Earth. They want us to see what's coming." They could only watch in horror as the Kreltharan ships accelerated past them toward the inner solar system. Earth had orbital defenses, but nothing that could stand against this armada. The first target was the Moon. Earth's lunar colonies had been established 15 years earlier, home to nearly 10,000 people. The Kreltharan ships didn't bother with precision strikes. They simply bombarded the surface until nothing remained but dust and ruins. "No," Lisa whispered, as they watched the destruction on their screens. "All those people." Earth's orbital stations were next. The International Space Platform, the Chinese Harmony Station, the private habitats built by corporations, all were destroyed in minutes. Only then did the main Kreltharan vessel approach Earth itself. It positioned itself in orbit and broadcast a message to every screen and speaker on the planet. "People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Kreltharan Dominion. Surrender your governments and military forces immediately. Resistance is futile and will result in planetary bombardment. You have 6 hours to comply." On the Valiant, John Miller watched the ultimatum with clenched fists. There was no way back to Earth. The path was blocked by Kreltharan ships, but the Valiant was still intact, still armed. "What are your orders, Captain?" Susan asked, her voice steady despite everything they'd witnessed. John looked at his crew, at Lisa, at the distant blue sphere of Earth surrounded by hostile ships. "We find a way to fight back," he said. "They tried to force Earth to kneel. We're going to answer, with fire." 3 months had passed since the Kreltharan invasion began. Earth was no longer the peaceful, united world it had once been. Major cities lay in ruins. The aliens controlled the skies and had established bases in strategic locations across the planet. Millions were dead. Billions lived under alien rule. But humanity had not surrendered. Colonel Samantha Wright crouched in the burnt-out shell of what had once been a shopping mall in Chicago. Her resistance cell had grown from 20 soldiers to over 200 fighters in the past month alone. Regular people, teachers, doctors, office workers had joined the fight, learning to use weapons and guerrilla tactics against the alien occupiers. "They're moving another supply convoy through downtown," said Frank Garcia, her scout. 6 hover trucks, with Kreltharan guards. Samantha nodded. "Perfect. Tell everyone to get in position." The plan was simple but effective. They would hit the convoy, take what supplies they could, and disappear back into the ruins of the city before reinforcements arrived. They had done this 5 times already. Each success brought more people to their cause. "Remember," she told her fighters over the radio, "aim for the breathing apparatus on their necks. It's their weak point." As the alien convoy rounded the corner, Samantha gave the signal. Explosives hidden in the road detonated, disabling the lead and rear vehicles. The resistance fighters opened fire from windows and rooftops. The Kreltharan guards fought back, their energy weapons cutting through concrete like it was paper. But they were outnumbered and taken by surprise. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. The aliens were dead and the humans were loading food, medicine, and weapons into their own vehicles. "We've got 5 minutes before their patrols respond," Samantha warned. "Move fast." As her people worked, Samantha noticed something in one of the trucks. It wasn't supplies. It was a human prisoner, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes wearing the remains of what had once been a lab coat. "Who are you?" she asked as she cut his restraints. "Dr. Alan Carter," he replied, his voice hoarse. "Physics department at Northwestern University. They've been making me work for them at their research facility." "Why would they need a human physicist?" Dr. Carter's eyes darted around nervously. "They're having trouble with Earth's magnetic field. It's interfering with some of their technology. I was supposed to help them solve it." Samantha made a quick decision. "You're coming with us." Miles away in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Captain John Miller stared at the tactical display aboard the UES Valiant. The ship had seen better days. Battle damage scarred its hull and they were constantly short on supplies. But it was still flying, still fighting. After the initial attack, Miller had realized they couldn't return to Earth. Instead, they had made their way to the asteroid belt, where mining operations had been established years ago. The miners had welcomed them, offering supplies and shelter among the rocks. "Captain," Lieutenant Susan Adams called from her station, "the mining ship Daedalus is returning." Miller nodded. The Daedalus was one of several mining vessels that had joined what they now called the Belt Fleet. Its captain, Hector Ramirez, had been a civilian until 3 months ago. Now he was one of Miller's most trusted allies. "They hit a Kreltharan freighter near Mars," Susan reported. "Got away clean with a hold full of alien tech. This was how they survived now. Hit-and-run attacks on Kreltharan supply ships, stealing what they needed, then disappearing back into the asteroid field where the aliens had trouble tracking them. The Belt Fleet had grown from just the Valiant to over 30 ships of various sizes. Most were mining vessels converted for combat, but they had also been joined by 3 military ships that had escaped Earth during the invasion. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez had remained with them. Her diplomatic skills were now used to mediate between the different factions within the fleet. Not everyone agreed on how to fight the aliens, but they all wanted Earth back. "John," Lisa said, entering the bridge, "Hector brought back something interesting. You need to see this." In the cargo bay of the Daedalus, a team of engineers was examining a piece of Kreltharan technology. It was a shield generator, similar to the ones that had made the alien ships nearly invulnerable during the initial attack. "We've been studying their shield technology for weeks," explained Ben Cho, the fleet's chief engineer. "This is the first intact generator we've captured." "Can we use it?" Miller asked. "Better," Ben replied with a grin. "We can break it. Look at this." He activated a device he had built. The alien shield generator sputtered and died. "What did you just do?" Lisa asked. The shields operate on a specific frequency, Ben explained. If we can generate a counter frequency, we can disrupt them, make their ships vulnerable. For the first time in months, Miller felt real hope. Can you build more of these disruptors? With the right materials, yes, but they have limited range. We'd need to get close to their ships for it to work. Then that's what we'll do, Miller said. We'll get close. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter had been brought to the Resistance's hidden base in an old subway station. After being checked by their doctor and given food and water, he sat down with Samantha. The Kreltharn have a problem, he explained. Their technology is powerful, but it's sensitive to certain types of radiation. Earth's magnetic field is stronger and more variable than they expected. It's causing issues with their systems. Can we use that against them? Samantha asked. Maybe, Alan replied. I was working on a theory before they captured me. If we could generate a strong enough electromagnetic pulse tuned to the right frequency, we might be able to disable their technology temporarily. Samantha leaned forward. How temporarily? Minutes, maybe hours. Enough time to strike back. And how do we generate this pulse? Alan sighed. That's the hard part. We'd need access to major power stations. Most of those are under Kreltharn control now. But not all of them, Samantha said with a small smile. We've got people inside. A hydroelectric plant in Wisconsin. It's still running, still providing power to the region. That could work, Alan said, his eyes widening. If we could modify the generators there, we might be able to create a localized pulse. How localized? Maybe 100-mile radius, Samantha nodded. Enough to clear the skies over a major city, enough to give us a fighting chance. As they planned their next move, neither the resistance on Earth nor the fleet in the asteroid belt knew about each other's breakthroughs. But across the solar system, humans were finding ways to fight back. The Kreltharn had expected Earth to fall quickly, to surrender in the face of superior technology and overwhelming force. They had not counted on human resilience, human ingenuity, or human courage. They had tried to force Earth to kneel. Humanity was preparing to answer with fire. 8 months into the occupation, Earth was a different planet. Cities that had once shined with light now lay in darkness. Forests had been cut down for alien construction projects. Oceans were harvested for their minerals. But something else had changed too. The resistance was growing stronger. Colonel Samantha Wright stood on a hill overlooking what had once been Denver. The city was now a massive Kreltharn processing center. Thousands of humans worked there under alien supervision, processing Earth's resources for shipment off-world. Are you sure this will work? She asked the man beside her. Dr. Alan Carter nodded. His device, which they had named the Prometheus Protocol, was ready. Over the past 5 months, they had tested it on smaller targets with increasing success. Today would be their biggest operation yet. The pulse will disable their technology for approximately 45 minutes, Alan explained. Everything with Kreltharn circuits will stop working, and our equipment? Protected, as long as everyone is using the shields we developed. Samantha gave the order over her secure radio. All units prepare to move on my signal. Remember, once the pulse hits, we have 45 minutes to free as many people as possible and get out. She looked at her watch and counted down. 3, 2, 1, now. Alan activated the device. There was no sound, no visible effect, but across the valley, alien lights began to flicker and die. Kreltharn vehicles stopped moving. Their weapon systems went offline. Go, 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 Samantha ordered. Hundreds of resistance fighters emerged from hiding places around the facility. They moved quickly, taking down the confused aliens with conventional weapons. The Kreltharn, so dependent on their technology, were vulnerable. Without it. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Lieutenant Eric Johnson prepared for the most dangerous mission of his life. Captain Miller had selected him to lead a small team to infiltrate a Kreltharn command ship. Their goal was to steal strategic information and, if possible, make contact with resistance forces on Earth. The ship will be passing through this sector in 20 minutes, Susan Adams explained, pointing to a map. We've modified a mining shuttle to match the radiation signature of their auxiliary craft. If they're not looking too closely, they should let you dock." Eric nodded. His team consisted of 4 other volunteers, all trained for combat but hoping to avoid it. Stealth was their ally here. "Remember," Captain Miller told them, "this is about information, not a firefight. Get in, download what you can from their systems, and get out." "Yes, sir," Eric replied. The plan worked better than they had hoped. The mining shuttle, disguised as a Kreltharan craft, was allowed to dock, without question. Once inside, Eric's team moved carefully through the massive ship, using the schematics they had pieced together from previous encounters. They reached the central data hub without being detected. While 2 team members stood guard, Eric and the others connected their devices to the alien system. Thanks to months of studying Kreltharan technology, they were able to bypass the security measures. "Look at this," whispered Nancy Kim, their computer specialist. "They're planning something big. A new weapon deployment." Eric looked at the screen. Even with their limited understanding of the alien language, the images were clear enough. The Kreltharan were building massive structures at key points around Earth. "Download everything," Eric ordered. "We need to get this back to the fleet." As they worked, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. They had been discovered. "Finish the download," Eric told Nancy. "We'll hold them off." The corridor outside, the data hub quickly filled with Kreltharan soldiers. Eric and his team were outnumbered, but they had the advantage of position. For 15 tense minutes, they held back the aliens until Nancy announced the download was complete. "Now we run," Eric said. They fought their way back to their shuttle, losing 1 team member in the process. As they undocked and sped away from the command ship, Kreltharan fighters pursued them. "We're not going to outrun them," Nancy said. "We don't need to," Eric replied. "We just need to reach the rendezvous point." As if on cue, 3 ships from the Belt Fleet appeared, opening fire on the Kreltharan pursuers. Under their cover, Eric's shuttle made it back to the Valiant. "What did you find?" Captain Miller asked as soon as they were aboard. "Sir, they're building something on Earth. Some kind of energy collectors. And there's more. We found communications with their homeworld. The Kreltharan aren't working alone. They're part of something called the Dominion, a collection of species that conquer other worlds for resources. This was a game changer. Earth wasn't just fighting one alien species. They were fighting an entire coalition. But there was good news, too. Among the data they had stolen was information about other conquered species who were now fighting back against the Dominion. One group in particular, calling themselves the Voidaran Alliance, had been successful in liberating several of their worlds. "If we could contact this alliance," Lisa Rodriguez suggested, "we might gain valuable allies." "And how do we do that?" Miller asked. "We can barely communicate with Earth, let alone across interstellar space." "Actually," Eric said, "the data includes the frequencies they use for secure communication. If we could boost our signal strength enough." On Earth, Samantha's operation had been a success. They had freed over 1,000 human workers from the Denver facility and destroyed key components of the alien processing plant. But as they regrouped at their hidden base, a new problem emerged. "They're adapting," Alan explained, examining a piece of Kreltharan technology they had captured. "They're starting to shield their systems against our electromagnetic pulse." "How long until the Prometheus protocol is useless?" Samantha asked. "Hard to say. Weeks, maybe months. We need something stronger, more focused." A young radio operator interrupted them. "Colonel, we're picking up a signal. It's weak, but it's definitely not Kreltharan, and it's coming from space." Samantha followed him to the communications equipment. Through the static, a human voice was barely audible. "Earth Resistance. This is the UES Valiant. Captain John Miller. We have information. Preparing counterstrike." For the first time since the invasion, Earth's resistance knew they weren't fighting alone. There were still human forces in space, and they had a plan. As Samantha's people worked to establish a clearer connection with the Valiant, Alan Carter studied the new Kreltharan technology with renewed determination. If the aliens were adapting, so would humanity. The war for Earth was entering a new phase. The Kreltharan had come expecting conquest. Instead, they had ignited a fire that was spreading across the planet and beyond. A fire of resistance, of hope, and of determination that would not be extinguished until Earth was free again. 1 year had passed since the day the Kreltharan arrived. Captain John Miller was no longer just a captain. The remaining military leaders had promoted him to admiral, giving him command of what they now called the United Resistance Fleet. The fleet had grown. What began as a small group of Earthships hiding in the asteroid belt had become a real fighting force. 3 weeks ago, they had made contact with the Voidaran Alliance, a coalition of species who had also suffered under Kreltharan rule. The Voidarans were tall, with pale skin and large eyes adapted to the dim light of their homeworld. Their ambassador, Kelisor, now stood beside Miller on the bridge of the Valiant. "Your plan is bold, Admiral," Kelisor said. "Perhaps too bold." "Bold is all we have left," Miller replied. "According to our intelligence, the Kreltharan are building planet-killer weapons at key points around Earth. Once those weapons are operational, we lose any chance of taking back our world." The plan was called Operation Firestorm. It would be a coordinated attack on multiple fronts, space, ground, and electronic warfare all happening simultaneously. The goal wasn't just to hurt the Kreltharan, but to break their control of Earth completely. "The Voidaran Council has approved your request," Kelisor said. "Our fleet will arrive to support yours in 3 days." Miller nodded. "Thank you. Please, tell your council that Earth won't forget this alliance." On the planet below, Colonel Samantha Wright was preparing her part of Operation Firestorm. The ground forces of the Resistance had united under her command, forming a global army of over 200,000 fighters. "The timing has to be perfect," she told her regional commanders during their secure video meeting. "When the electromagnetic pulse hits, we'll have a short window to strike at their command centers." The largest Kreltharan base on Earth had been built over the ruins of New York City. That would be Samantha's target. The aliens had converted the former United Nations headquarters into their central command post, a symbol of their dominance over humanity. Dr. Alan Carter had spent months perfecting the Prometheus protocol. What began as a localized electromagnetic pulse had evolved into a sophisticated weapon that could target Kreltharan technology with surgical precision. "The new version is ready," he told Samantha. "We can deploy it globally now, through the remaining power grid. Every resistance cell has the shield technology to protect their own equipment." "How long will it disable their systems?" Samantha asked. 2 hours, Alan replied. "Twice as long as before, but they're still adapting. This might be our last chance to use it effectively." Lieutenant Eric Johnson volunteered to lead the most dangerous part of the operation. While the main fleet engaged the Kreltharan in space, a small team would infiltrate the aliens' flagship and plant explosives in its power core. "It's a one-way trip," Miller warned him. "Even if you succeed, you might not make it back." "I understand, sir," Eric replied, "but someone has to do it." The day before Operation Firestorm was set to begin, a message arrived from the Kreltharan. Their supreme commander, Drakmor, had finally revealed himself. His image appeared on screens across Earth and throughout the Resistance fleet. "Humans," he said, his voice cold and mechanical through the translation system. "Your resistance is becoming annoying. We have been merciful until now, allowing many of you to live as workers. This mercy ends today." The image shifted to show one of the structures the Kreltharan had been building. It was a massive energy weapon pointing down at Earth from orbit. "We have constructed 6 planet killers around your world," Drakmor continued. "Each can destroy a continent. Unless all resistance ceases immediately, we will demonstrate their power on what you call Australia. You have 6 hours to surrender." Miller looked at Lisa Rodriguez. "Can we be ready in 6 hours?" Lisa nodded. "We'll have to be. I'll contact Samantha and tell her to move up the timetable." Across Earth, resistance forces prepared for battle. They had planned for 2 more days of preparation, but now they had only hours. Weapons were distributed. Positions were taken. The Prometheus protocol was prepared for global activation. In space, the United Resistance Fleet moved into position. The Voidaran reinforcements arrived early, their sleek ships joining Miller's ragtag armada. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Susan Adams, now Miller's second-in-command, announced. "And Johnson's team?" "Already deployed. They're approaching the flagship now." Miller took a deep breath. "Send the signal to Earth. Tell them we're starting now." On Earth, Samantha received the message. "It's time," she told her forces. "Activate the Prometheus protocol." Alan Carter pressed the button. Across the planet, hidden transmitters sent out a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse. Krell-Theron systems began to fail. Their ships drifted in orbit. Their ground vehicles stopped. Their weapons went silent. In the confusion, Eric Johnson's team successfully boarded the Krell-Theron flagship. They moved quickly through the corridors, planting explosives at key structural points. "They're going to feel this one," Eric said as they reached the main power core. This was the heart of the ship, a massive chamber pulsing with energy that humans had never seen before. As they worked, an alarm sounded. The Krell-Theron were adapting faster than expected. Some systems were coming back online. "We need more time," one of Eric's team members said. Eric made a quick decision. "All of you, get back to the shuttle. I'll finish here." "Lieutenant, we can't leave you." "That's an order." Eric interrupted. "Someone needs to make it back to tell them it worked." Reluctantly, his team left him. Eric continued planting the explosives around the power core. He could hear Krell-Theron soldiers approaching. In space, the battle had begun. The human and Voidaran ships attacked the Krell-Theron fleet. Without their advanced shields, the alien vessels were vulnerable. But there were still hundreds of them against Miller's much smaller force. "Focus fire on the planet killers," Miller ordered. "Those are the priority targets." On Earth, Samantha led the assault on the New York Command Center. The resistance fighters moved through the streets, engaging Krell-Theron soldiers whose advanced weapons were now useless. But the aliens were still physically powerful, and they fought back with simpler weapons. "Push forward," Samantha shouted as they approached the former UN building. "We need to take the command center before their systems come back online." Across the planet, similar battles were being fought. Resistance cells attacked Krell-Theron bases and freed human prisoners. For the first time since the invasion, the aliens were on the defensive. In orbit, one of the planet killers began to power up. The Prometheus protocol was wearing off faster than expected. "They're targeting Australia," Susan reported. Energy levels rising. Miller ordered every available ship to concentrate fire on that weapon. But would it be enough? And what about the other 5 planet killers? As the battle raged around him, Miller could only hope that Eric Johnson would complete his mission in time. Everything depended on disabling that flagship before the Krell-Theron could coordinate their forces and bring their most devastating weapons to bear. The war for Earth had entered its final, desperate phase. Lieutenant Eric Johnson worked quickly as the sounds of Krell-Theron soldiers grew closer. The flagship's power core pulsed with alien energy in front of him. He had placed explosives at key points, but there was a problem. The ship's systems were coming back online faster than expected. The timer wouldn't work. Someone would need to trigger the detonation manually. Eric checked his weapon and prepared for his final stand. He opened a communication channel to the Valiant. "Admiral Miller, this is Johnson. Explosives are in place, but I'll need to trigger them manually. There won't be time for me to get out." Miller's voice came back, filled with static. "Eric, there has to be another way." "There isn't, sir. But when this flagship goes down, the Krell-Theron fleet will lose coordination. That's your window to take out those planet killers." There was a pause before Miller responded. "We won't waste the chance you're giving us. Earth will remember what you did today." Eric smiled sadly. "Just make sure we win, sir." The door to the power core burst open. Krell-Theron soldiers poured in, their weapons now functioning again. Eric took cover behind a console and fired back. He just needed to hold them off long enough to reach the detonator. In space, the battle raged across Earth's orbit. The Valiant shook as enemy fire struck its hull. Admiral Miller held onto his command chair as damage reports flooded in. "Shield generators are failing," Susan reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Miller nodded grimly. "Maintain fire on those planet killers. We can't let them target the surface. The Voidaran ships were taking heavy losses too, but they had managed to destroy one of the 6 planet killers. 5 remained, and one of them was still powering up to fire on Australia. Admiral, a communications officer called. Colonel Wright is reporting progress on the ground. In New York, Samantha's forces had fought their way to the former UN building. The resistance fighters moved room by room, clearing out the Kreltharan defenders. Samantha herself led the push toward the central command room. Dr. Carter, what's the status of the Prometheus protocol? She asked over her radio. It's failing faster than we expected, Alan replied from their backup position. The Kreltharan are adapting. I estimate 20 more minutes before their systems are fully operational again. Then we have 20 minutes to end this, Samantha said. She turned to her fighters. This is it. Beyond that door is the Kreltharan command center. Taking it will cripple their ground operations worldwide. They breached the door and found themselves in a massive room filled with alien technology. Kreltharan officers turned to face them, drawing weapons. At the center stood a tall figure, Samantha, recognized from broadcasts, Drakmor himself, the supreme commander of the invasion force. Humans, Drakmor said, his voice cold. Your resistance ends here. On the Kreltharan flagship, Eric Johnson was down to his last few rounds of ammunition. He had been hit twice, and blood soaked his uniform. But he had almost reached the detonator. The aliens were closing in from all sides. With a final effort, Eric lunged for the detonator. His hand closed around it as enemy fire tore into him. With his last strength, he pressed the button. The Kreltharan flagship exploded in a massive fireball that lit up Earth's orbit. The blast damaged nearby alien vessels and sent a shockwave through their formation. Lieutenant Johnson has done it, Susan announced on the Valiant's bridge. The flagship is gone. Miller allowed himself only a moment of grief for Eric and his team. The Kreltharan fleet is in disarray. All ships, concentrate fire on the planet killers. The combined human and Voidaran fleet surged forward. Without the flagship to coordinate them, the Kreltharan vessels fell into confusion. 2 more planet killers were destroyed in quick succession. In New York, Samantha faced off against Drakmor. The alien commander was physically imposing, easily 7 feet tall with armored skin. He swung a weapon that crackled with energy, barely missing Samantha as she dodged. Your species is primitive, Drakmor snarled. You were meant to serve the Dominion, not fight it. We were meant to be free, Samantha replied, firing her weapon. The shot struck Drakmor but didn't penetrate his armor. He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. At that moment, Alan Carter's voice came through Samantha's radio. Colonel, I've managed to remotely access their command systems. The self-destruct sequence is ready. Do it, Samantha ordered. Alarms blared throughout the building. Drakmor turned to his console in surprise, giving Samantha the opening she needed. She charged forward, tackling the alien commander. They crashed into the main control panel together. Everyone out now, Samantha shouted to her fighters. This place is going to blow. In space, the tide had turned. 4 of the 6 planet killers had been destroyed. The 5th was badly damaged and drifting, but the 6th had completed its power-up sequence. It's targeting North America now, Susan reported. Every ship we have, focus on that last planet killer, Miller ordered. The Valiant was barely holding together. Multiple decks were exposed to space, and life support was failing. But Miller pushed the ship forward, leading what might be their final charge. The Voidaran ships joined them, forming a spearhead aimed at the last planet killer. They took devastating fire from the remaining Kreltharan vessels, but they pressed on. Weapons range in 10 seconds. Susan counted down. On Earth, Samantha's forces evacuated the UN building as the self-destruct sequence counted down. Samantha herself was still inside, fighting Drakmor. The alien commander had her pinned down, his clawed hand at her throat. Your resistance was impressive, human, he said. But ultimately futile. Samantha smiled through bloodied lips. Look, around you. Your command center is about to explode. Your flagship is gone. Your fleet is losing. We may die here, but Earth will be free. The realization dawned on Drakmor's alien features. He had failed. The supposedly easy conquest of Earth had turned into a devastating defeat. In space, the Valiant and its allies fired everything they had at the last planet killer. Their combined firepower finally overwhelmed its defenses. The massive weapon exploded just as it was about to fire. "We did it," Susan whispered as cheers erupted across the bridge. Miller nodded, his eyes on the blue planet below. "Send the signal. Tell everyone on Earth that the skies are clear." Across the planet, resistance fighters received the news and pressed their advantage against the now leaderless Krell-Theran forces. In New York, the UN building exploded, taking Drakmor and the Krell-Theran command structure with it. Samantha had managed to escape just in time, dragging herself clear of the blast. As she watched the building collapse, her radio crackled with messages from around the world. Everywhere, the aliens were surrendering or retreating. 3 days later, Admiral Miller stood on the Valiant's observation deck, looking at Earth. Lisa Rodriguez joined him, carrying a tablet with reports from the surface. "The cleanup will take years," she said, "but we've won. The last Krell-Theran forces are surrendering." "At what cost?" Miller asked quietly, thinking of Eric Johnson and countless others who had died. "A terrible one," Lisa admitted. "But we're free, and we're not alone anymore." She gestured to where Kalasor and other Voidaran representatives were meeting with Earth's leaders. New alliances were forming, new friendships across the stars. 1 month later, a memorial was held in what had once been Central Park. A simple stone monument was erected, bearing the names of those who had given their lives to free Earth. The top were the words that had become humanity's battle cry. "They tried to force Earth to kneel. We answered with fire." Samantha Wright, now General Wright, stood beside Dr. Alan Carter as they placed flowers at the monument. Admiral Miller joined them, along with Lisa Rodriguez and representatives from a dozen alien species who had fought the Dominion. "What happens now?" Alan asked. Miller looked up at the stars, where Earth's new defensive fleet was being built. "Now we make sure this never happens again. Not to us. Not to anyone." The Krell-Theran had come expecting an easy victory over a primitive world. Instead, they had awakened something they couldn't understand: the unbreakable human spirit. Against all odds, humanity had not only survived but emerged stronger, taking its place among the stars not as conquered subjects but as equals. Earth would never kneel.